Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, September the 13th. Wow, does that sound funky in my ears? I guess it's been a couple of days and since I last recorded, but also, yeah, this feels weird. What is going on with my headphones? Let me see if I can turn myself up and maybe that can fix something, but why would I need to turn myself up so much? You know, I do definitely have like a nasally thing going on right now where it's, I think, low humidity and my nose is all dried out, so maybe that's why. And my ears are a little clogged too. That could be it. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah. This real quality content I'm making here. Well, anyways, so I managed to stay kind of awake through a couple days, so now we're streaming at a more reasonable time instead of trying to start at the beginning of start streaming at like 10 in the evening. I didn't make any real recordings at all over the weekend, but I did surprisingly get a lot of other side projects further along, which is nice. But none of it has anything to do with playing video games or YouTube, so I distracted myself there. Also, I didn't schedule anywhere as much as I should, but I did finally start scheduling some videos earlier today, which honestly, Dead Space 3 as a game that I was thinking was going to air around the time of October isn't going to air anytime around October. And honestly, at this point, it probably doesn't really matter to try and maintain and have a Halloween month series. It is as good of a point as anywhere else to try and reset and have an anniversary of some sort, have an annualized event for a YouTube channel. But yeah, Halloween's nothing special to YouTube. And what I would generally want to do is, if I had a lot more ambition and energy, would have been to go ahead and just schedule Dead Space 3 to air as a third extra series during October. But if I do that, that'll just end up taking me even further behind and just wasting all of my time. Speaking of waste of times, on Amazon Prime Day, there was a sale for a Western Digital external hard drive. That hard drive never worked, and I went in to plug it in yesterday, and it straight up was broken. Just would not work at all. It would connect for a second, then fail. And I clearly should have just sent it back as soon as it gave me any little trouble. If I ever blamed EXFAT, the FAT64 file allocation table system that's now used, that's probably not the problem. Although, in all fairness, I still would generally recommend people to reformat any hard drive that is EXFAT to NTFS if you're using it on Windows at all, or ext4 if you're using it on Linux or Macintosh. Just because there's just better reasons, I think, to stick to that kind of format for file recovery reasons. Like, sure, you probably won't notice a difference as long as it's still working, but the second you have trouble, EXFAT, I think, will make it a lot more difficult to do any kind of file recovery, if possible at all. I am not sure there is a way to recover any data if lost, and the amount of corruption in the data because of that one hard drive definitely added to me at least 20 man hours, and still ongoing issues of just files got corrupted, files need to be replaced now, files need to be identified as corrupted. It is not a good situation that you want. It is literally the closest thing to cancer you can have happen in a computer is files that look like they're good but turn out that they're bad. Let's see. I guess we'll be playing Swordcraft today. So let's just hop in here and do this. Aggro Swordcraft. I guess. Yep. We'll stick with that. So yeah, because I didn't play any Binding of Isaac for the accountability section, there's really not much that can be said there. I mean, I didn't. I will want to finish that up and move on. The Western Digital hard drive, by the way, I'm mailing it back, but it's a hassle, certainly. In Western Digital, I must complain, charged me for shipping to send it back, and tried to upsell me $25 to have a hard drive shipped to me before they received the broken one, which that is probably an offer that some people would be willing to take, but honestly it feels like a sales pitch. I see EU is on the chat saying hi EU. I don't think you advertise that kind of service, not to end users, not to frustrated people. You maybe advertise that to companies and businesses where $25 to get faster shipping of a replacement of a hard drive is totally worth it, because one down hard drive probably is slowing down at least one employee, probably a lot more, that for $25. I mean, you're talking three man hours at minimum wage, even if you're just paying minimum wage for one down hard drive. And one down hard drive is almost certainly going to take more than 3 man hours to get taken out and replaced. Although if businesses and IT departments are doing their jobs right, they should have spare hard drives sitting around already. And effectively, any kind of service that says, we'll get you a replacement faster, is really just preying on people who are either too poor to have backup spares or too stupid to have backup spares. There you go. And I definitely am starting to run out of space. Like, having a file history drive and a backup hard drive all on the same drive, 5 terabyte drive, is just filling up stuff over and over again. But honestly, if I just worked on my server and got it up and running, I would have plenty of space if I could get it up and running in at least some form. But yeah, I've been very bad about actually getting it to work, which is insane to have a server, now 2 servers, and have invested so much into it and just have it mostly be turned off and not working, or not doing what it should be doing. Although, in all fairness, there's a slight argument to not work on my server right now, in that I'm still waiting for Linux Debian to upgrade to ZFS version 2.1, which has distributed RAID as an option, which is something I would have really liked to have seen as an option 4 years ago, really. But whatever.
You'll be my victim today. Are you worth your weight in gold?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to really talk about. There's a game, a little tiny game called Fingered, where you point the finger at the bad guy based on a description, made by Edmund McMillan, one of the original creators of The Binding of Isaac. So once I finish The Binding of Isaac, I'll probably at least spotlight that, if not play it. Then I'm gonna have to think about what I'm gonna do. It could definitely be a good point to play a Lego game, and also probably is gonna feel a little too early for a lot of people, but it might be a decent point to finish the nonary games as far as visual novels, but I'm very well could see myself put that off also. Yeah, I suppose there is a slight stupidity in trying a new genre of games and potentially getting fans of people seeing me try this new genre of games to only then not be prepared for success in a sense, and have people demanding more of that same genre. Visual novels, JRPGs, fighting games, all of those are things that certainly I want to try more of them, but I also could find myself very uninterested in covering them as much as a rabid fandom might be interested in actually seeing them. Alright, well, then we keep this one, and I guess we keep this one. And then kill that one. Alright. Well, there's really no reason to not go through the news today. Hope my headphones aren't breaking. It would be fairly ironic if it turned out that within the same month of my controller breaking, my headphones also start breaking. I did just find out that my Xbox One controller is plugged into a USB 2 port, which is weird, but seemingly doesn't seem to matter either. I also plugged in my cell phone into my computer, which is not something I normally do, to see what would happen more than anything. And it installed the Samsung DeX, because it's a Samsung phone, and launched a window, or a virtual window terminal, to an Android variation of the operating system. So yeah, theoretically, I guess I could play Android games that way, but I can't play Destiny Child that way, because I totally did launch Destiny Child while it was there, and it didn't show any of the graphics. So I know Destiny Child does push the graphics a little bit, and my phone always does heat up when it's running, but yeah, it does seem to me like any heavy graphically involved game has a chance of not really working through Samsung DeX. Now, if Windows 11 has their feature where you can just plug in any Android phone and it will run, or it will run natively and run native Android apps, maybe there'll be a different situation there, and maybe that'd work. It doesn't really change much though if I could show Destiny Child, because it's such an adult game in the uncensored version, and even in the censored version it's a fairly adult game. So so I really couldn't show much on it. Plus, it's kind of a boring game. It plays itself. It's basically a screensaver.
Limiters removed.
But I still kind of love it because it plays itself, whereas I've grown to eventually disconnect and get rid of everything else on my phone as far as games.
Sisters,
Alright.
love you.
Well, this isn't going to help me any.
The uncharted desert awaits. Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Let's see. I could attack this, but I would die. I could evolve to attack this.
March on! I'm ready for more. What do we have here?
Die, Kraken. Blow on, dear wind.
Yeah. I think you pretty much lose here.
You will atone for wasting my time.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a lot of reason as a video game critic that all of a sudden being able to easier record cell phone games would then have me want to actually play more cell phone games or try and cover them. It's so incredibly easy as a video game critic to say they just don't stand up to comparison in almost every case compared to a PC or console game, and they just aren't really worth bothering to review them. Most of them are free to play or free to start anyway, so there is just no marketplace to give consumer advice there when there is no actual consuming happening other than the microtransactions and the DLC, in-app purchases and things like that. This would be funny if I just ran into a point where they're updating. Apparently Blackpink surpassed 65.5 million subscribers on YouTube globally, which makes them, I guess, the most subscribed artist on the platform. I guess terminology there, does artist include everyone, every content creator on YouTube, or does it only mean someone who mainstream media would consider an artist? Because there could be a big difference there, certainly. And they're a group of like 4 Asian ladies from the look of the picture. So that they say the most subscribed artist, but is without the S, when it should be artists in that case. And perhaps arguably you should consider dividing this by at least 3, if not 4, because it's 4 separate people. And then if you think about like PewDiePie, I mean, how is he not an artist in every sense of the word? Like, sure, maybe his content he make isn't great, he makes isn't not the best, but not as appealing to everyone, but he's still an artist. He's made video games or helped make video games. He makes his own videos all the time. He makes music, even though it's terrible music or joke music. Like, even if you were to say that Blackpink is the most subscribed music artist, I think it is at least slightly debatable there.
things up.
But yeah, that's the thing they're promoting right now. So, and I guess that's not terrible that for YouTube, really, as long as they're just putting out some positivity in general, and even if they are just picking winners and losers and only talking about people they really want to support and giant people with, I assume, managers and entire publishing companies behind them, positivity is still better than the opposite. If anything, I think YouTube probably deserves a bit of a pat on the back because they have managed to avoid getting into any controversy in probably the entirety of this pandemic, I would say, as far as they have not made some vast overreaching move to kick off a ridiculous amount of people or deplatform a ridiculous amount of people. It's Reddit right now that is mostly having those fights, and while Twitch isn't dealing with pandemic related drama, they certainly are dealing with brigaded, or at least a perception of hate raid brigades being very prevalent on Twitch.
Too slow.
So yeah, I guess YouTube deserves a little bit of a thumbs up there, for as much as we have to poop on them for them screwing up almost always in every other scenario. But I would also heavily suspect that the reason why they haven't done anything dramatic is because they simply are just working from home, and when they managed to not be in an office, less work gets done in general, and perhaps even they aren't all in the same echo chamber so much. It might do massive good for most careers, most jobs, most working environments, for people to work from home and away from their coworkers. I could totally see there being way larger numbers of just toxic coworkers, people who are spouting nonsense but can convince other people or bully other people to agree, people who can just generally derail what would be good ideas into bad ideas. And once everybody is just kind of working from their own home and they can think for themselves and they can be a lot more relaxed and less frustrated and less exhausted, maybe people in general at some point will start thinking a lot better in general and just making better decisions.
Here we go.
That is perhaps too hopeful. But one thing I should complain about is, as far as YouTube, is I did try to test out that dark mode on the YouTube desktop. It immediately logged me out, and that really scared me because for a second there I thought, uh-oh, did I just trigger some kind of glitch that is going to accidentally delete my entire channel? Did I just... something just happened that made my entire channel get deleted? That is jumping from 0 to 60 very, very fast, of course. And I didn't really believe that was going to happen. But there is that slight concern anytime YouTube logs you out or something like that. But no, whatever their dark mode is, it doesn't work. At least not on my computer. It immediately logs me out, and then I have to log back in, and it still hasn't changed anything. I was like, okay, that sucks. I kind of felt like the dark mode might help me a lot with scheduling videos. Moving on with games, because I don't want this stream today to be that long. We have a game here called Case 2 Paranormal Evil. We have games left over from Friday, so we'll have a decent amount of them. $44.79, English and Chinese. Apparently this is the Physical Exorcism series, but apparently at some point they just started naming them K00, Cannibal Boy, K02, Paranormal Evil. Physical Exorcism is Case 1. So it seems to be a series of RPG Maker or RPG like games. They're probably not even RPG Maker in this case, that are half dungeon crawler and half visual novel, I would imagine.
I need more fear, more terror.
Got a job to do.
Die, Cretan.
That's enough.
Loyalty is
No one gets
ironclad.
past me.
That's enough.
Let's see.
Loyalty is ironclad.
Here we have a game on Steam called Bundler Day 1, which looks like a maybe point and click adventure game. The screenshots are a little rough here. You've got a non-square framed image and it's black all around the borders, and then you have a squared frame image and it's black around all the borders, and then you have slightly different ratio image and then a slightly different ratioed image. There's just kind of an inconsistency there that makes it feel off-putting as far as the game. I would have much preferred what you would have done here is just zoom in and cropped. Just zoom in and crop this square image so that it's all the way to the edge at a 16:9. There's kind of plenty of room to cut off this side, enough room to cut off this side, and if worst case to worst, you can cut off the top here, and you can cut off quite a bit here to zoom in. Same is true here. You could zoom in here and maybe have this black part just up here, but that would still be considerably less black part. Even if you just zoomed around where the text is, that would be fine. If you were going to get really fancy, you would zoom in and just crop like the head off this guy, or just get the tip of the head off this guy cropped, and then you could get everything past this person to the right could be cropped, and everything past this person on the left could be cropped too. Yeah. Even if you're just doing that for your screenshots, that would feel way better. This game is free to play, English and Russian. Yeah, with a level of that quality, as far as just getting your screenshot, there is definitely not a lot of faith that a game like that would be good. Next game is tag sexual content, so let me just double check to make sure the screenshots are safe. Yeah. Here we have one called Nagari Boshi, which I don't know what that really means, if that means anything in Japanese. I think bashi is the word for a bad mistake when eating, or a mistake when eating, like sticking your chopsticks up directly in a rice bowl, which mimics the like funeral ceremonies they do. But yeah, I have no idea what that could stand for. $1.19 English, allegedly full audio. Suppose it is worth admitting that I am probably about 1,000 times better at least sounding like I can pronounce a Japanese word than I am about actually being able to understand what it says. Like, my actual comprehension of Japanese words is pathetically low. It's not zero, which probably for a lot of people, most people, would be zero. But yeah, I don't think I could make more than half a sentence, maybe one sentence. And that's saying a lot in Japanese because of how incredibly subtle their language is. So it's not a lot of verbs and prepositions and things in the middle there. So yeah. But the good news is that most of these Japanese games really just have Japanese names, and everything is either translated to English or not on top of that. So all you have to do is, and that's why I can pronounce the game's names fairly well, but not really understand it too much. There was definitely a point there where in the 80s, in 85, 83, when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, that there was a considerable number of people who could not pronounce Nintendo. And honestly, the way Nintendo is pronounced now is probably a lot more westernized than the right way to pronounce Nintendo would be. Like, it is oddly spelled for a Japanese word. Nin, like N-I-N, it doesn't feel right. And then tin, T-E-N, doesn't feel right. And do does feel right, because almost always it's two letters, or something like sheet, which is SH. So it's like two sounds together. So if you looked at Nintendo and I was going to think how you would pronounce that in proper Japanese, I would assume it would be ni, and then nt, and so ni, nt, in, then ian, and then do. Yeah. And that just feels awkward to pronounce that. Like ni, nt, and do. But that probably is closer, and probably not by much, the way a Japanese person would have pronounced Nintendo before it became a big thing. In all fairness, there was a ton of parents that did not care how to pronounce Nintendo, and it was really a step forward just to get to the stereotypical situation where parents were calling the Sega Genesis and the PlayStations and everything a Nintendo. That was at least a step forward, because there was plenty of parents that would just A, not buy Nintendos at all for their kids, or B, just not care how it was pronounced and just call it an Atari or game system. Video games. That was another one.
Are you worth your weight in gold?
Of course, you'd be a pretty out of it parent today to not know the difference between a Nintendo and a PlayStation and an Xbox. And you take note that the PlayStation, Xbox, Master System, Game Gear, every other company had very easy to recognize and speak names for their consoles, at least. with exceptions of some failures like the Ouya and things like that. And while Sega is a Japanese company, Sega is a shorter name, so it would be hard. Maybe originally in Japanese it would be Sega and more pronounced that way, but that's not much of a difference.
Time for me to prove
And
myself.
Sony would be Sony, obviously, but I'd assume it was originally pronounced that way. But again, 4-letter words compared to 8-letter word in Nintendo. And Microsoft is, its name is, I think, kind of a direct pun against a software company called Macrosoft, which existed a long time ago, but not of any real importance nowadays.
Forest be at peace.
Steve Jobs got Apple right. I'll have to say, naming your company Apple is super easy for any Western to pronounce. It's a little shocking that somebody didn't try to go up in quality. Apples are quite common as far as a fruit, and maybe that's what the goal is, to make the Apple products incredibly common. But
And those acorns flying out of the woods.
like but you could certainly go up in the fruit category or the food category to something that is a little bit higher and better quality, and name your company after that. Pomegranate is the first one that comes to my mind, but you could certainly call your company Red Delicious. It's a type of apple. Maybe you'd get sued from Apple from doing that. But you could certainly name your company like Filet Mignon or Prime Cut Steak. Caviar. Caviar would be a great name for a company. Maybe you make it, change it a little bit, but yeah, not too many other food named companies that I can think of.
No way! Hey, let's play. There's a chance for a grand slam.
Anyways, I'm getting distracted here. Here we have a game on Steam called Basic Rogue, which looks like a basic roguelike. $2.99 English only. Here we have a game called Home Designer Makeover Blast, which looks like it's a match 3 or more game, and probably a mobile phone game. Seems like there's extra visual novel elements for a match 3 game, which seems a little ridiculous. $4.49. Let's see. This and do this.
Home, everybody!
Here we have a game called Princess and Knight, which I think was supposed to be Princess and Knight, but somebody misspelled it. The actual game looks like nothing of interest. Single screen puzzle platformer. Frog Princess and Cat Knight. Yep. This feels like something that might have worked a little bit better as a cell phone game. But yeah. The idea of it all being single screen, I think, just limits a game like this to make it worse, doesn't make it better. $2.99 English and Korean. Alright, this.
Turn light to the canals.
At your service.
Do this.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Do
Let's
this.
speed things up. Too slow.
Check that.
Oh,
No one gets past me.
dine it the horses.
Should have been quicker.
Let's see. Next, we have a game called Factory Manager Simulator, which looks just like an asset flip, low polygon garbage game.
Playwrights never back
$12.74. It's way too expensive. Here we have a game called Project Grove Prologue, which
Ravaged dear forest.
honestly feels a lot like just a mix between another game I covered
Done for.
where you run around this forest and you
Grovel.
suck and
You
put out
Hey,
you suck and blow life energy, for lack of a better term, and can take it out of certain creatures and put it back into certain creatures to bring them back. And you also do some running and platforming. There was also a game called A Story About My Uncle, where you ran around and platformed and hovered and jumped through these kind of floating areas with a glove like this. There is a danger certainly around the idea of seeing a game with large amounts of floating boulders in the air, because that is a first hint of a game just not being really developed well as a environment, and that they do want you to potentially just swing around. Seems like you go around this forest, seems like you explore some things, seems like you investigate some things, you brew magical potions. See, there might be a game here, and there might not. But weirdly, I imagine you wouldn't make a prologue for this game, which is not coming out until 2022. Yeah, I imagine you wouldn't make a prologue for a game
Got a job.
unless you actually let's see. Darn it. Didn't move fast enough. Yeah, imagine you wouldn't make a prologue for a game if you weren't actually trying to sell it and make it a good product. So
Enemy or
you have to
no.
give them some credit for that. That doesn't mean I'm actually going to look at their demo, but I can't immediately dismiss them as being trying to sell an asset flip. Yeah. There might be kind of a backwards way of thinking here that actually works, as far as if Steam started to really push / force everybody who paid that $100 Steam Direct to put out a prologue type demo game, then effectively it would force a lot of the low effort asset flippers to basically give away all the material that they made and not hide or lock anything behind mystery, only to disappoint the player later when they actually purchase it and start playing it. On the other hand, maybe Steam doesn't even have to force people to make prologues. Maybe they just make it such an industry standard that all good game developers put out a prologue that there becomes a point in the next 5 years where I just say, if this game doesn't have a demo, if this game doesn't have a prologue, I'm not even willing to consider it. And that prologue would have to be there on before day one of the release of a game. Yeah, people might just see so few cells if they don't have a prologue, it may stop being valuable for them to make low effort games and asset flip games and put them on Steam. I don't think that would be the case though, because I think the assumption here is that there's just a ton of money laundering going on. So when a Russian low effort asset flip gets put on Steam, it's not really there to trick more than a few thousand people at most into buying it. It's there to let somebody take their dirty money and buy a bunch of copies of the game to launder their dirty money to the video game company. And when you're in the business of money laundering, losing 30% to Steam, or losing even more in development of a low effort asset flip game, is not a big expense. Moving on, we have a game here called Travelers and some Asian characters. This looks like a simplistic Chinese game. Almost feels like it might be a Oregon Trail style game. And that's an interesting idea to say Oregon Trail was a roguelike. And I guess in a certain way it was. You just never really would have thought about it that way. I wouldn't have. This is $2.99, but it's Chinese only. Yeah, we have a game called Moonlight Princess, which looks like a top-down hack and slash game. They have this like weird area of effect. Apparently it's a massive multiplayer game too. It's free as an MMO, but it doesn't have any in-app purchases, so I don't know what they're really going for here. In the actual game, the art style looks almost alright. It's kind of dull and repetitive, but then nothing makes sense when you look at it. It doesn't look like a real game. It doesn't look like something that would be entertaining to play.
It looks like I'm up.
Let's speed things up.
Got to roam in style.
Someone call tech
Too
support.
slow.
So yeah, I have to say no to Moonlight Princess. Here we have a game called Nilla, which looks just like a rogue dungeon crawler. Again, a lot of gray here. Not quite full black, but a lot of gray on the side that could have been cropped out. $4.49 English, Spanish, and Spain Spanish and Italian.
It's time you got a taste of your own.
Here we have a game called Desert War, which, yeah, 2D hack and slasher game. All the screenshots look the same as far as the background, so it doesn't look like you do anything other than run from one point to another point on this same level. $1.19 English and Russian.
Coming at you.
This would be fine if this was like the first 5 to 20 minutes of a game, and then you ended up at a different level and there was more platforming and collectibles and just game there.
Booting program.
The kind of animations here look fairly nice, but it looks to me like there's probably only 2 or 3 enemy styles, and it just does feel like you're infinitely gonna battle the same people.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Who will be my victim today?
Let's see.
March on!
Time to appraise your. Are you worth your weight in gold?
Unable to compute.
What do we have here?
Yes, we do that.
Won't be extinguished so easily.
Video Game Chronicles has some art interviews. I think maybe these are from actually Gamatsu, and Video Game Chronicles is just reporting about the interview from Gamatsu, but we'll see who the original source is, hopefully. from Platinum. Platinum wants to bring Star Fox Zero to Switch, but any potential design changes would be up to Nintendo if it happens, says the studio head. Generally, the only thing you can ever say when you're doing business with Nintendo is it's Nintendo's decision as far as whether they want to do anything or not, because I've never seen a situation where Nintendo was not completely and totally in control of every decision process, and Platinum is probably consistently still doing business with Nintendo in the fact that they do kowtow to Nintendo. And in all fairness, like, what can they do? They could potentially take the code and reskin it and make a game that wasn't Star Fox but played a lot like Star Fox, but they would basically have to make a brand new game. They couldn't copy the code over, and that would definitely hurt Platinum Games. There would have to be a very public breakup between Platinum Games before they would do anything like that. And frankly, it's not worth it for Star Fox Zero to do that. But yeah, and you really couldn't even copy the code over. You'd just have to make a clean room new group of code. Meanwhile, Platinum is more focused on like Wonderful 101 and Bayonetta 3, and Platinum is in a dangerous position, I suppose, where they need to really either get acquired by Nintendo completely, which Nintendo I don't think has really acquired anybody as a company, and that'd be it's kind of getting shocking that they haven't in this whole age of acquisitions. But yeah, Platinum either needs to become part of Nintendo and be acquired, or they need to make a game that is multi-platform and shows that the people still working at Platinum can actually make games for all the consoles and not just Nintendo Switch, and that they can make different types of games and not just the same things that they made. In a funny way, they kind of need to get away from Bayonetta, and that would be fine. Make a new game that is extremely similar to Bayonetta, but just doesn't have Bayonetta in it. Get away from the Angel stuff and the Devil stuff, and then go closer to, I don't know, high fantasy, elves and things like that. Try some different genre. I don't know if there really is any devil stuff in Bayonetta. I was trying to say Devil May Cry style of Bayonetta, but actually I don't want to see them go away from the Devil May Cry style. I want them to go deeper down that route. Excuse me.
Are you worth your weight
Yeah,
in gold?
I definitely feel like there's been a allergen or pressure thing that happened all of a sudden. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says Xbox and Arcane's Redfall has leaked via developmental screenshots, which, I mean, I guess these are leaks of screenshots. I don't think it is phrased correctly here. The game itself has not leaked, and it's not like Redfall itself was unannounced. If anything, we would hope with any leaks that this would show kind of something more interesting with the idea of fighting vampires. because this was one that looked like it very possibly could be very, very boring, as it is just potentially going to be a Left 4 Dead with vampires competing against Back 4 Blood, competing against, well, even the old Left 4 Dead games. It does feel like somehow we've ended up with maybe 2 or 3 too many vampire themed games all being announced. And I don't know if this is just straight up people stealing other people's ideas or what.
Stay away from me.
What do we have here?
An opportunity
But yeah,
for growth.
there was a point there a couple years ago where it felt like it was going to be the year of the pirate, and that didn't happen. And now it's starting to feel like in about 6 months to a year, it's going to be the year of the vampire.
Luck to you.
And I bet that doesn't happen either. I bet there's at least one major cancellation of a vampire game. I bet 2 or 3 of them come out and are completely ignored and uninteresting. And then it turns out at best there will be 1, maybe 2 good vampire games worth playing for 6 months to a year after that. You know, come to think of it, the Assassin's Creed series would have worked if Altair was a vampire. Yeah, instead of using an electronic device to read the mind of vampires, of humans' DNAs, instead you would use,
Die, cretin.
you would just go into the memory of a vampire and have a flashback.
Harder armor, stronger. Steel yourself. Loyalty is ironclad.
Kind of like Interview with the Vampire. Apparently they're making an Interview with the Vampire. I played wrongly there. I should have attacked the other guy. I would have saved myself some damage. Yeah, apparently they're trying to make a TV series based on Interview with the Vampire. It probably will never come out,
Worth their salt.
and even if it does, it probably won't be that good. But perhaps this is just a really slow revelation as far as zombies with The Walking Dead were super popular for a decade, and now they're trying to do the same with vampires. But I mean, I don't know why people would think that would work. Moving on, Nintendo's new WarioWare game contains Luigi Mansion beta assets. Which, okay. So they reused old content that they had sitting around. If anything, that's just a great argument for making a game like WarioWare where the visuals can look like garbage, and that's just part of the appeal of it. Wow. That was an amazing card to play. Not really getting any victories here. Let's see if we can maybe find a different Swordcraft deck to play. Video Game Chronicles reports scalpers are reportedly getting 30% less for PS5s, but the Xbox Series X prices are holding firm. Resale StockX claims that the resilient Xbox prices are due to fewer restocks. So, what do you take from that? I mean, if you're biased against Sony, you take that to mean that that fewer people are willing to overpay on scalped PlayStation 5s. If you're biased pro Sony, then you say, well, that's because Sony has done a better job at restocking and supplying the demand and people letting people buy the console at regular places without paying scalper high prices. And Xbox Series X is actually the one dropping the ball as far as keeping storage shelves full.
Designs are like unhatched dragons.
I imagine it probably doesn't mean anything. Video Game Chronicles has this article. Bayonetta's voice actor hints that she might not be returning. Helena Taylor said fans might have to imagine the series without her voice. In the upcoming third game. I wonder if that's because the voice actress is secretly dying of cancer or something, or if she's just negotiating and playing hardball. Bayonetta's voice is kind of distinctive, but you could, I think, fairly easily replace her with some sound alike, and I probably wouldn't remember it. There has been definitely enough time between when I last played Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2 coming out on the PlayStation, on the Switch only, so I haven't played it. And whenever Bayonetta 3 actually does come out, so yeah, there could be a whole bunch of different reasons why you would say no. Here I'm looking at the trailer for Bayonetta 3, and just kind of implies she's fighting ghosts. It has been 4 years since December 17th when it was originally announced that it was in development, Bayonetta 3. So there is a lot of talk about Bayonetta 3 and the assumption that it is ready to go, and it is just Nintendo holding back for Metroid Prime 4, which has been long delayed, and I guess now Metroid Dread. So I would say that the bet is fairly high that Metroid Dread will come out, and within 6 months of Metroid Dread coming out, you will get a release of Bayonetta 3. Slightly after 6 months, probably. Just out of that initial 6 months window. I could definitely see Japanese people and Nintendo just thinking, we can't have two strong women coming out so close to each other, because then it will help hurt our image as a more manly focused, more boy focused site. Yeah, I could straight up see just some basic sexism saying that they won't put out two strong female protagonists in a row as far as games, and that they'll want to try and release something like a Zelda game first in between, or a Mario game in between. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says Nintendo has now confirmed that a Switch price cut is rolling out in Europe, which, okay, this is for the original Switch, but the OLED version soon to be out. So I could see potential slight price cut also happening in the United States, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't do that.
mission is to come back alive. Don't count your tanukis just yet.
Okay.
Don't fall out of
So
line.
you hit that.
Just finish the job.
Do that. And then do that.
What?
Then end the turn. Next we have on Steam a game by a whole bunch of Asian characters. Just looks like a generic Chinese game of no interest. $4.99, Chinese only. Here we have a game called The Final Frontier, which just looks like a space fly around shoot game. Asteroids clone. $1.99 English and a whole bunch of other languages, allegedly in full audio, but no subtitle support. So this is a funny misinterpretation of what full audio means, because they've taken it to mean that there are sound effects, I'm sure, in the game that are compatible with every language available, but not interface or subtitles that are compatible with every other language.
I need more fear, more terror.
Got a job to do.
We can kill this guy. We could evolve this guy.
March on!
I've got 8 transformations up my sleeve. Die, cretin.
That's enough.
Loyalty is ironclad.
Hit that.
Too slow.
And hit
What?
that. What's shocking about this is how much these fonts look so much like Arkanoid or Galaxia, the old arcade font,
Be cast into the void beyond.
which we don't see that too much as far as arcade clone looking games, where they potentially are just completely copying and pasting the font. But it's not a bad idea. Like, while everything outside of this font looks bad, this is slightly recognizable, even though this looks different with the number of ships you have. And this just feels incredibly familiar as far as Atari. So it does bring back like the old arcade feel a little bit. And if that's what you're trying to invoke, that just using a simple touchstone like a very similar, if not the exact same font, can do that for people. Or at least it can help. Here we have a game called A Journey Through Valhalla, which I don't know how many people go through Valhalla.
To arms! There's a battle
And
underway.
yeah, this just looks like a
Mother, father.
low polygon Viking hack and slash game. They're calling it a dungeon crawler. And a Souls-like. $5.99 English only. I'm not interested. Here we have a game called Dinoland 2, which looks like a big mess of neon colors. Free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Dinoland, which just looks like a mobile phone game. Although it looks more 3D than a mobile phone game. Puzzle game we enjoy lightly using the rules of billiards. You can enjoy lightly is how it's described. This trailer is going through all the menu in the initial cutscene. Like, you are a full minute before you actually get into the gameplay in this trailer of a 3-minute and 43-second trailer. And the idea is not terrible to have dinosaurs that roll up and turn into to balls and you're playing billiards there. That's fine, but you can see there's like this premium currency, and you can see this is definitely a mobile game. Yeah. This entire game just screams cell phone traps. $4.99 English only. There aren't any in-app purchases, it seems, but yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
More and more it seems like we're just getting failed cell phone games trying to be sold as full products on Steam. The concept alone, though, could totally have worked. Of course, Super Monkey Ball is going to make it a little bit more difficult to justify playing something that is similar to a Super Monkey Ball game.
you're mean.
Let's see. Next we have Phil and Cross Trick or Treat 3, which, yep, just a pick to cross game. $2.99, English, French, German, and Russian. No to that. We have something all in Asian letters. The Anti-Turing Test. Looks like it's a card-based battler system. Yep. Seems like it's probably just a cheap Chinese attempt. Probably a better attempt than most, but still kind of lacking in a connecting concept. Why you would want what look like really high action robot girls fighting each other, but then it's behind a card game. Doesn't really make sense. Early access $9.89, English and Chinese. I guess you do that. I guess you do that.
Allow yourself to forget.
Here we have a game called Death on the Street Corner Overdose Simulator, which obviously is just a troll game. Low polygon. 79 cents English only.
Make it fashion.
We have one called Prestigious Trilogy, which looks like a really old CGA Commodore game. But yeah, I don't know why you'd want to play a game like this, particularly a new game like this. That is just a real rough art style by modern standards. $6.29. That's a no. Today very well may be a no for everything. Alright. You do this,
Let's speed things up.
and then evolve this.
March on.
There's no time for you slugs.
And then play
I do
that.
believe we have a case.
And that.
Too slow.
You're mean.
Here we have a game on Steam called Airstrike, which does not seem like you're actually doing an airstrike. Seems like you're dogfighting. Airstrike is when you drop a bomb on something, last time I checked. $1.19 English only. That'll be another no. Okay.
Is it edible? Only one way to find out.
Ooh, it's shiny.
It's just in the turn. There. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Video Games Chronicle has this article. PlayStation's latest ad could contain a Resident Evil 4 remake nod. Could also simply contain a material that is that has been purchased from something else.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around
Are they certain this is from Resident Evil though? Like, isn't maybe this was an Evil Within also? What immediately jumps out to my eyes is this skull here. Also implies that maybe some skull game is coming out here. They could have just filled this whole area with Easter eggs. The new live-action marketing video games contains a logo from the Capcom game. Logo? From Resident Evil? It is questionable, certainly, though, if Capcom is going to manage to be able to make a Resident Evil 4 remake, considering how they're being sued last I checked, last I heard, by they're being sued for stealing basically the materials. Oh, I did want to talk about this general live action ad, because this ad is weird. It's just like chess, chess, and chess, and there's kind of like no connection there at all. It's just like a lot of chess pieces showing up for kind of no reason, which, unless Sony PlayStation puts out a really high-class chess game, it doesn't make sense. And it implies to me what happened here. Somebody hired a advertisement company to promote games. They didn't. Nobody in the advertisement company knew anything about video games at all, and decided to just focus around chess for some reason, or perhaps the person is obsessed with chess. Like that's about the only thing that would make any sense to me at all.
One step closer to victory.
I'm ready for more. What do we have here?
I did my bestest.
No escape.
Yeah, this is a really weird video. And it's still going on too. It's been like 2 minutes, and it's like there's 2 queens and there's 2 kings characters, and they're all playing chess, and then all these other characters show up and they look like they're going after each other. Like, really just an incredibly long picture of ad about chess, and then there's like Aloy in the background at the very end, and that's it. Like, so it feels like this was probably an ad that was either going to have a lot more references hidden in it, or this was an ad designed like really early, and then a whole bunch of games got delayed. But yeah, if anything, that feels like a great example of Sony of California wanting to hire possibly some actors to promote something, and to promote Sony and PlayStation, instead of just having video game footage, which would make a lot more sense. And honestly, I would have been much happier after looking at this video, which,
There's a battle underway.
how long was this? 2 minutes and 36 seconds. After watching that ad, I would have been much happier if it was just those same live action actors acting out things, games from, or events or characters from the games, or something else. Yeah. I think we already talked about this, but Gematsu has the Square Enix and Tokyo Game Show 2021 lineups and schedule. Check that out if that interests you. Probably doesn't really matter until they start making announcements. Omen of Sorrow for Xbox One launches September 15th, and a PC version is coming to Steam. It is a horror-themed fighting game currently available on the PS4 and Epic Game Store. This was the kind of weird, almost like Dark Stalkers fighting game. I think we had already talked about this too. Fighting game of kind of monster people. Maybe somewhat close to a Killer Instinct clone too.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
I guess there's a real question though. Can a game like Omen of Sorrow find an audience, and could it possibly even replace Killer Instinct? Because in a lot of ways, Killer Instinct, 50% of those characters that you can play as are monsters anyway, so you get away from a fairly ridiculous and overburdened storyline if you tried to make a Killer Instinct clone. Plus, you don't have to then live up to the demands and desires of Killer Instinct fans, which in all fairness too, the Killer Instinct series of games, I don't know if any of them have been really worth playing since Killer Instinct. No, I'm talking about Mortal Kombat. Yeah, just replace the word Killer Instinct with Mortal Kombat for the past 5 minutes. Yep. Yeah, making a Mortal Kombat clone might make a lot of sense instead of trying to make a new Mortal Kombat game. I don't know if any of the Mortal Kombat games were worth playing after the second one.
As many as I have wronged.
Moving on, I think getting close to falling asleep here. A game called Heaven Burns Red has its first trailers and pre-registration now available in Japan. It's a dramatic RPG from WFS and Key, due out in 2021. Never heard of WFS or Key. Let's see. Right Flyer Studios. It's a good name for a company. Right with a W as in the Wright brothers. The actual game looks to be mostly a visual novel with maybe some generic RPG elements. Yep. At a certain level, as ridiculous as an anime-inspired type game like this is, it really highlights, I think, the way cell phone games should go. And certainly you could make a Western style game like this where it isn't anime girls in school outfits, but the idea of more press a button to do a quick time event and then watch a 5-minute cutscene, while there isn't really a lot of space for that like you can do on consoles, that probably is the way to go with these kinds of with cell phone games in general, because I just don't think
I mustn't give in.
yeah, I could have played so much better there. Yeah, because you don't have any kind of input options, or you don't have very many input options on the cell phone. It's really just tapping the screen. So there really shouldn't be that much gameplay mechanics. And that is definitely a reason why I enjoy Destiny Child so much, is it's a game that just plays itself. So I don't have to press any buttons at all, except for just press the next button or set it up. Maybe I do 5 taps before setting up the game and then leaving it for 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, I'm not watching it. And you can play the game if you want to. You're not forced to let it play itself, but you can also just put it in auto mode, and that gets the job done for the most part.
Good folk for breakfast.
One step closer to victory.
I ain't dead yet. Hands up! I mustn't give
Too
in.
slow. Too slow.
Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu has this week's Japanese games releases. Let's see. We'll just
God's design is
list them all. Alien Fireteam Elite.
neither heaven nor earth
What's
shall
that?
be your
Amamene 2. Benji Dream Girls Band Party for Nintendo Switch. Deathloop. Deathloop is out. We'll talk about that later. Charade Maniacs for the Switch. Kiwi or Kiwi. Metallic Child. Neptunia X Sinrin Kagura Ninja Wars. I heard that wasn't particularly well received, but yeah, I figured these games probably wouldn't be. Ni no Kuni Revenant Kingdom for the Switch 2. I didn't know that wasn't on the Switch, Ni no Kuni 2. Space-Based Startopia, and Since Memories Off the Starry Sky. I think that's a visual novel. And then some more digital games are out. Let's see if anything's worth mentioning. Poker Pretty Girls Battle Texas Hold'em. Nah. I think kind of curating it down to just talking about the ones that came out in physical form is kind of an interesting way to pull that off. Let's see.
Are you ready for true combat? Hot.
Too slow. Should have been quicker.
Stand there, fight.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Dan Place, which just looks like a garbage asset flip game. $3.19, English and Portuguese, Brazil. Which I guess that's not Spanish anymore. Nope, I guess this is Portuguese from Brazil.
Well then.
Yep. Next we have a game called Raster Prime. Yeah, there's a difference between speaking Spanish and speaking Portuguese. Probably a big difference. $4.99, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Memoir de Arumac, which looks like it's a kind of maybe point and click adventure RPG game. I don't think this supports English, unfortunately. Free to play, French only. Yep.
The uncharted desert awaits.
We won't give him an inch.
Who will be my victim today? Are you worth your weight in gold?
Let's see. If we could kill this guy, we might be able to win.
I lowballed you. Damn.
This is definitive proof of God's authority.
The United States Texas Comptroller, which I guess is just the Texas Comptroller, put out a tweet that was retweeted by the ESA. Our quest to find the economic impact of Texas video game industry has revealed treasures untold. Join the adventure, and then a bunch of emojis. Hashtag video game day. It's fairly political, I think, to put this out by the comptroller, because what is this? This a just incredibly terrible video game slideshow. Yeah. This is just straight up stolen assets from Nintendo, which I'm sure Nintendo as a member of ESA probably would let them. Let's see. 35 higher education programs were funded. 24,000 supported, industry supported jobs. 4.15 billion total economic output. Okay. Yeah. It is worth mentioning though, because of the abortion law that was recently passed, the laws and attempts to do voter restrictions and just general Republican and conservative movement in Texas, there's at the very least a lot of talk of moving not just video game companies but tech companies in general out of Texas. And there has always been a kind of, in hindsight, very justified desire to not bring video games or industry jobs to Texas because of the general attitude of their legislators and the way they pass laws and pass restrictive things. It is way better for most tech companies to have a headquarters or a second office in New York City, even if the cost in New York City is ridiculously high, because they know New York City, for instance, or California, will bend over backwards to accommodate them and give them all kinds of tax incentives and tax breaks, and they will also be amongst their peers, and their co-workers will be amongst their peers. It's a big deal to move from one city to the next, let alone one state to the next in the United States. That everybody's a little bit different, and the people you're going to have to deal with on day to day in grocery stores and on the road, all of that can certainly drastically affect your day. And a lot of that may just be perception. If you get someone who was born and raised in California and then you give them a job and move them to even like Austin, Texas, if they feel like all Texans suck, that they're going to definitely perceive that all Texans suck. So, yeah. There was definitely a point there where it felt like maybe parts of Texas would become the new Los Angeles. But I don't think it would. And the smart thing to do for all these businesses to do is just straight up buy like several thousand acres in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the United States, and just build your own city basically from the ground up. Like that would be ideally your move, is if you build your own commune basically out in the middle of nowhere, then they don't have to deal with anybody else, and they can get the land really cheap. And also, if you build in the middle of the United States, you're further away from the coastline and thus further away from dangerous weather. But yeah, that kind of worked out for Las Vegas. That middle of the desert, build a city, just to have casinos, make a Las Vegas of video game development. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Upgrade VR, which looks like nothing. Seems like it's a basic tech demo, free to play, English and Russian. Here we have a game called Oscilla, which looks to me like it's probably just a horror asset flip game.
I'm ready for more.
This is kind of a generic title thumbnail. $5.99 English only. This could have been. It is slightly visually interesting, but my concern. Horror game based on real events really scares me away too. And you're having a lot of dark screenshot syndrome here on this trailer. See, the problem with trying to make a trailer like this where the lights are flashing out, where it might very well be a very audio-based trailer, is the fact that a lot of people are not going to hear the audio. So, yeah, I was completely unaffected by the audio because I did not hear it.
Are you ready for true?
Best of luck to you.
Pathetic!
What is this weird feeling?
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Cruel Kings, which looks like nothing. $14.24. That's way too expensive. English only. Here we have a game called Parking Light, which just looks like an asset flip of a school bus.
Challenge!
$13.29 English only. Again, way too expensive. Here we have Waifu versus Evil compared to Hentai versus Evil. Yep.
Got a job to do.
It's not super surprising that there would be a clone of what is a fairly low effort game anyways in Hentai versus Evil.
Loyalty is ironclad. March on! Harder armor. Steel yourself.
Yeah, let's go and just hit that.
Loyalty is ironclad.
Yep. Waifu versus Evil looks like nothing but a low effort asset flip horror game that at random occasions seems to have just some low effort anime girls 2D images popping up in the middle of the screen for no reason. It's 74 cents English only. Claims they have realistic graphics. I don't really agree with that. Not at least for the waifus. Here we have a game on Steam called Robonauts, which looks like kind of nothing.
I will silence you once and for all.
There might be something here. I don't know if I'm just getting desperate because we've seen so many bad games in the past couple streams, but I'm gonna put this one on the follow list. It's English, allegedly full audio, $2.99. This probably doesn't deserve a follow, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Here we have a game called Hyperfleet, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest to me, at least. $4.99. Looks like it's just gonna be flying around polygonal areas. Here we have a game called Escape the Outbreak, which looks like garbage. $3.99 English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have a game called Space Doomer, which looks like a joke troll game. 59 cents English only. Here we have Lost in Random. Wow, this game just came out in the middle of no advertisement at all. Like, this got an announcement and a teaser over the course of a couple of weeks, and then apparently just came out. That's crazy. Third party EA origin required. English full audio. I suspect there is a decent chance that this 133 reviews might swing in a different direction, but that is the case. I guess that could happen with any game. So as this is, I'm gonna have to just put this on the wish list. It's tagged as an action adventure game. Wouldn't be surprised if this feels somewhat similar to a Psychonauts game or Double Fine game. Maybe more generically a Double Fine game than even a Psychonauts game.
He's feeling hungry.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Plumber 3, which looks like kind of just a plumbing game, but on the other hand, I have still yet to find a good version of the plumbing game. So, $4.79 is asking too much. English only. Do I eliminate it because of the price, or do I put it on the fall list? I'm going to put this on the fall list and then probably eliminate it later for just being irrelevant, since you almost certainly will never get 30 reviews on it. And then I'd have to think and consider whether it's worth it to make an exception for a plumbing game. Gematsu has the retro kung fu action game Fire Dragon Fist Master Zhao Mei coming to Switch in 2021 in Japan. Which, okay. Fire fighting. What kind of game is it really? There is a occasional fetish around the classic red Chinese dress that pops up and goes away. Yep. This is like fairly nicely animated but done in an old style. That looks slightly interesting. But there is definitely also a question, is this just a generic JRPG game? They're calling it a retro kung fu action game, and I guess that's probably what it is. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole bunch of visual novel dialogue stuff that happens too.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
The action RPG Asterigos has been announced for the PS5, PS4, and PC. It's due out in the spring of 2022. Which, this must have just announced itself, because I don't recall seeing this at the PlayStation Direct, and there hasn't really been anything else. Acme Game Studio. Well, the visuals there look very interesting. Of course, we are about 15 years past the point where a mid-tier game developer can make a game that looks very interesting and then it still turn out to be pretty awful. One that comes directly to mind is the game X-Blades, which played fairly badly and then had the visuals to trick a lot of people into still buying the game.
I go with the wind.
Selling on a scantily clad looking character.
No one gets past me.
Unbelievable! No!
In a lot of ways,
Got my speedy boots on.
this game strikes me as potentially being a new attempt at something like a God of War, the old God of War games, with giant monsters and a lot of hacking and slashing and jumping and moving. Yeah. Could also be inspired slightly by things like Dark Souls and be a bit more of a brutal game than something like God of War was, where God of War was fairly easy to God of War was fairly easy to play and win at, relatively speaking.
It looks like I'm up.
Man, son of a gun, ain't ya?
Let's see.
March on!
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady?
Are you worth your weight in gold?
Unbelievable.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Minesweeper Ultimate, which just looks like Minesweeper, so I don't know why you'd pay $2.54 for that. English and several other languages.
You'll make a good test subject.
Here we have a game called
It won't be long now.
Ardarium, I guess is how you'd pronounce that.
Sorry, but this ends here.
And that looks like total garbage.
Colts is
$1.79, English only. Here we have a game called Forsaken Worlds, Gods and Demons, which is mostly negative already. This must be an MMORPG that just does not connect or work. Free to play. Yeah, third party account. In-app purchases. English full audio only. Interesting. By far the worst pay to win model ever designed. You literally have to pay for member aka VIP to download content faster. Interesting.
unbelievable. I'm out of cash.
Yeah, and I can see the beginning and the end, and we're only an hour and 47 minutes. I suppose it's because in part that September 11th happened over the weekend. There probably was just a decent number of people who were not willing to put out games on September 11th and on the weekends, and so I imagine that probably just slows some releases down and some news down. Also, we may just be getting out of the summer slump, and now we'll just have less releases for a while anyways. Which I'd be fine with that. It'd be very nice if we could consistently get closer to
Speed things up.
Who will be my victim today?
One step closer.
it would be nice if we could get closer to 2 hours, sorry,
Are you worth your weight in gold?
Too slow.
per stream.
Unbelievable.
Also could do some follow list cleanup with the extra free time. So, GameDeveloper.com says Stillfront has acquired Emirati mobile studio Jawwaker for $205 million.
Should have been quicker.
Emirati, I guess, means they're from the United Arab Emirates. Is there that would be my assumption? What that's what Emirati means.
Got a job to do.
Right, so we hold on to this one, and this one.
This is my fate after all.
Actually, I could have held on to the other one.
Die, cretin.
My loyalty is ironclad.
Can't evolve. Don't have any more evolve options.
My loyalty is ironclad.
The next game we have on Steam is called My Busty Girlfriends, which is tagged as having nudity and sexual content. And I tend to probably believe them because they have made screenshots here, or either the gameplay mechanic works in such a way that it cuts out a whole bunch of the screen and then you have to recover it, or you see the whole screen and you have to cut it out like this, or somebody has done a very rough job of cutting things out. I would imagine that this is the gameplay mechanic, where you're cutting out more and more of edges of the image. That there's a game like that I've seen. I don't remember what it's called.
Are you ready for true
Do you understand now?
Yami's feeling hungry.
But yeah, as far as the game, it is delivering with anime girls with big busts.
A challenge.
At least that much it's delivering.
Damn, enemy or no.
It's $1.79 English only. This game does act as another canary in the coal mine, I suppose. My busty girlfriend's does, in that it was approved and allowed on Steam, so it seems like any fears that there's anything other than minor manipulation as far as adult content on Steam would be unjustified. We have not had anybody complain in at least 8 months, I would say, about being disallowed to sell their games on Steam. Which may just mean that Steam has gotten really good about explaining what games they will approve and what games they won't approve. The last game developer upset with Steam was Super Seducer 2's creator, and yeah, there has been no more news around that, which I wonder if we might getting. There's always a danger when you don't hear news about something that all the news reporting sites have gotten together to deplatform somebody, and particularly in the video game news press, which basically is just Jason Schreier and maybe a couple other people. It would be very easy for the people that make the news in video games to simply not cover a subject and it not get repeated by the 99.9% of everybody else who claims to be a video game journalist, but really just retweets and reposts Jason Schreier. Oh, I should probably say, I watched the old people that worked at Giant Bomb, who now go by a site called Nextlander on YouTube. They sat through the PlayStation announcement too. Honestly, they were slightly better than the people remaining at Giant Bomb as far as the coverage there. Neither one were great. Frankly, there wasn't a lot to say in that presentation anyways, but so I don't think I could have done it much better. But it definitely is I'm definitely getting the feeling with the most recent Giant Bomb amount of content that they've gotten fairly tired and uninterested in making the content good, or at least Nextlander feels like that they are struggling and trying to make something good for fear of becoming irrelevant and just failing miserably. Sometimes there are some people that actually do strive and improve themselves quite a bit because they are the underdog, where they get lazy once they're not the underdog. Speaking of dogs, here we have a game called Tax Fugitive, where you play as a dog. Nice transition there, if I do say so myself. It's $1.59 English, allegedly full audio. Looks like it's just a platforming game though, with really nothing else going for it. Well, the dog is cute and all. That can't make a game in itself. Here we have a game called Prop Factory. For some reason, all these tabs are taking a little bit to load up. I don't know why that is. I know Chrome just updated, so maybe they've change something. Prop factory. You memorize an object, you need to assemble it in order, but before you do that, you need to find the pieces in a mess of scraps and throw it in the conveyor simply by dragging. Yeah, I don't think I could ever play this game. I think I would just suck at it so badly. Like, this is a kind of Find Waldo in a mess of Waldo, a 3D hidden object style game that I don't think I could play. Although, in all fairness, as far as hidden object games, this is probably exactly what I would be looking for.
Let's speed things up. Let's speed things up.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
Too slow. Too slow.
A fitting end.
March on!
I ain't dead yet. Hands up!
I'd really like to get a victory here since we failed to do that at all today. That seems to be happening more. Yeah, just to say this again, yeah, I have often thought about the idea of a hidden object game with 3D objects where you're just having to move things around and rotate and look for things. And honestly, this probably directly shows me why that was a bad idea. I don't think for hidden object people that's what they want to do. I think hidden object players probably want to be more passive and not have to move around things that have physics and can bounce and roll away. So I think something like that would probably feel very unusual and just not what people really want. At some point it might be a new generation's way of playing hidden object games, if a new generation is going to play hidden object games.
Loyalty is ironclad.
Okay.
One step closer to victory. Harder armor. Steel yourself. And loyalty is ironclad.
Creepy. Damage heavy.
That's hot.
Moving on, Gamatsu says the Idolmaster Starlight Season story trailer overview master music video is now available to see. So you can check that out if you're interested. This is a smartphone game, I believe. Nope, PC and PS4. The idol producing game is due out October 14th in Japan. Questionable whether it's going to ever come out in the West. Yep, and we can see here I really dropped the ball. Should have just played some Havencraft and Portalcraft instead. I actually have a chance of winning between Havencraft and Portalcraft. Metacritic and OpenCritic have their scores for Deathloop, which came out or comes out in 12 hours and 32 seconds. I like how Metacritic is just straight up putting a timer there to tell you that, but then they're kind of also advertising. I guess I could probably clean up Metacritic if I cared and then was going to use it as a source.
Okay, no more crying.
From a YouTuber I follow that likes old school first-person shooting games set in a hardcore first-person shooter games, he said he thought this game was going to be fairly divisive. It's fairly grindy according to him, and a lot of the gameplay mechanics are not any better and sometimes not even as good as something like Dishonored, since this is Arcane Studio from the makers of Dishonored. And because you have this time loop element and you're working around this island that you have to, in the course of one day, get from one point to the first point that you need to go to on the island. It can't be that big of a level. So there are some caveats, I would say, from the review I heard around playing the game, particularly getting it day one and playing it. It also has kind of a weird multiplayer feature that seems kind of unnecessarily added on. In a lot of ways, Deathloop feels like it was a game that would have been the next Dishonored game that was in trouble, or they canceled the idea of having a Dishonored 3, so they took whatever was half finished and then just like polished it into a new game. It doesn't have seemingly a good ending or bad ending like Dishonored. It seems like the only way you can succeed is killing people, so there isn't a like peaceful way of doing things. Even when I'm looking at like the gameplay footage here on this trailer, there's a lot of people that are getting stabbed in kind of the same way, and they all have these masks on, so that just saves them so they don't have to actually animate anything. In a lot of ways, the game kind of visually feels like what We Happy Few should have felt like, visually and in gameplay mechanics. If this was the We Happy Few game that people wanted, well, that probably would have been better for the fans of the visuals there. But yeah, regardless of what the one reviewer, YouTuber I saw reviewed it, 63 Metacritic critics have given it a positive, and 5 have given it a mixed. The Gamer giving it 100, EGM giving it 100. It is averaging somewhere around 83, which is massively high. It is getting reviewed massively high, and I can't think that it got an 88 from Metacritic just because there's nothing else out at the moment. I have to really assume that there actually is a game there worth playing. On the other hand, OpenCritic's website looks way better. They're giving it a mighty with 88 top critic average and 94% of critics recommending it. So, yeah. People seem to really like it, and so far there doesn't seem to be any controversy around the game. So, if you're desperate for a first-person shooting game where you run around and do a decent amount of stealth, I think you do a decent amount of stealth in this game. And you wanted to play something like Dishonored, but perhaps a little bit more dumbed down and simplified, then Deathloop looks like the game for you. It would be very strange if the game came out and it was considerably differently reviewed by critics. I mean, not by critics, but by just actual game players and your average consumer. And if we were going to see those kinds of reviews, we'd have to basically wait 6 months and look on Steam, because most gamers are not going to bother to review a game if they dislike it. They're just going to get rid of it and move on with their life.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures. You're done for. Put your legs into each prayer. Back straight, eyes forward.
Moving on, we have a Gematsu article here. Forever Entertainment has announced a Night Slashers remake I don't know a game named Night Slashers. It was a 1993 beat 'em up for all major platforms. It's coming out. They previously produced a remake of Panzer Dragoon and are currently working on remakes of Panzer Dragoon 2 and House of the Dead 1 and 2. So, yep, Forever Entertainment, even in their name, seems to be fairly obviously focused around making remakes of games. LibRetro put out a video showing off Rom Bundler, which lets you make homebrew games and then compile them as executables, basically taking the elements of LibRetro and bundling it up into an exe. It's an interesting animation sequence here. This feels like this is just a joke animation sequence with a cartridge just jumping between different things. And see, I assume this isn't the actual homebrew game. But yeah, ROM Bundler not going to be very useful for most people unless you're a game developer who's making old homebrew games. Here we have a game called Dungeon Crawler Daniel, which is a funny name to say the least, but really just looks like an asset flip RPG maker game. $6.99, English only. Here we have a game called Nearly Dead, which, 2D open world survival game in a top-down kind of chibi version. Yeah, I think this is just leaning on too many cliches. A survival open world game where you're fighting demons from a different dimension. And then you start looking at this, and this really does just look like asset flip stuff. Early access $21.24, English and Korean. That's just way too expensive. And heal that. See, here we have a game on Steam called Terraform Incorporated, which looks like nothing. Maybe you're flying around as a dragon around a asset flipped environment. $7.49, English only. Here we have a game called House of Rules, which looks like some kind of horror puzzle game. There might be something to this. Early access, English and Korean. The main thing I think about this though would be, is this really a game or is it just a 5-minute experience? I'll put this on the follow list, but I also could see easily it never getting 30 reviews. Here we have a game called Space Battle SVF, which just looks like a neon barf of Space Battle. 72 cents, that's an odd price. Whole bunch of languages. Let's see, do this. And then deal this. Oh, death of the party. So he's just straight up thinking he's going to... Well, we'll see if that works. I've never seen this card before, or never paid attention to it, if I have seen it. Let's see. Gamatsu says Total War Warhammer 3 has been delayed to early 2022, which I don't know if too many people are going to care about that. Video Games Chronicle says Epic is appealing the court's ruling in its antitrust lawsuit against Apple. CEO Tim Sweeney just as determined as ever to fight on following losing the case, or a loss in the case. I am confused here because I thought they had a judgment in their favor most recently. They ruled against Epic in 9 out of 10 counts it brought. Epic's lawsuit against it. Yeah. So, yeah, what was the one count, I guess? Like, if they... See, this is the ridiculousness of just how people are kind of anti-Apple and pushing a narrative. And in all fairness, you have every reason to be anti-Apple, but you should try and report yeah, you should report things accurately. So, this headline, Epic Court Battle ends with Apple ordered to relax iOS payment rules, then down much smaller font, but the iPhone firm wins majority of counts and Epic ruled to have breached its contract. Apple has been ordered to allow iOS developers to link to an external payment option in their apps. And see, that's all that's being focused on, whereas everything else in this article really is hiding the fact that 9 of the 10 counts went against Epic. And Epic can probably appeal it, but I think what we may very well find, you're just as likely to find Apple appeals the one count that says it has to relax its iOS payment rules, although iOS seems like they're doing that almost voluntarily at this point anyways, so they may just take it as a victory and move forward. But yeah, I could see Apple appealing that one verdict and taking the others and not appealing any of the others, and then Apple getting a just clean slate victory. As much as I could see Epic appealing and succeeding on an appeal. Meanwhile, the Epic Store is still pretty awful, and there's still really not a good reason why you would ever actually buy anything on the Epic Store, other than the fact that they're spending a ton of money on exclusives, which I don't know if they're making enough money, frankly, to continue doing exclusives and lawsuits. And it's not just Video Game Chronicle that puts the headlines this way. Game Developer, who's way worse, has the same headline. Fortnite maker Epic is appealing the ruling of its Apple lawsuit, which that is fairly accurate, that headline, but we definitely have seen GameDeveloper.com or previously Gamasutra write headlines like the one we saw from Video Game Chronicle. Maybe in this case that they are showing the hints of maybe turning over a new leaf and being
What fine threads?
better at their reporting. Let's see.
Enemy identified.
Just gonna leave the cards there. And then we have a game on Steam here called Tech Beat Heart, which just looks like a shoot 'em up game. Doesn't look terrible, but doesn't look particularly good either. $2.69, English, allegedly full audio, several other languages in the interface. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an article. The Paradox CEO Frederick Wessner admits to subjecting employers to, quote, inappropriate behavior. Quote, everyone should have the right to be comfortable and safe, especially around a person in a position of power such as myself. This text is way too small for the subtitle, for a sub-headline. This guy also looks very bad, frankly, for a CEO. Yeah, like he needs, like, either a barber or to shave a lot better. This stubble does not work well for him. The mole doesn't work well. The t-shirt and the hoodie doesn't work well. What was the let's see. Is there any indication what the offensive treatment is, or are we just left with the general idea of offensive treatment? Because the general idea of offensive treatment can mean a lot of things.
Do not seek what is not there.
Now the fight begins.
Awaken, for the end is near.
Yeah, it's not saying what the offensive treatment is, so who knows what it could be. It could be yelling, shouting, it could be inappropriate touching, inappropriate jokes, inappropriate conversation, it could be exposing yourself, it could be anything and everything. So, I mean, you have to kind of just assume that he is being extremely cautious and apologizing for some tiny incident of, I assume shouting would be what, like the most harmless version of bad behavior you could expect from a CEO.
Damage heavy.
I mean, you kind of have to just assume that it's barely anything of mention. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles has Platinum Games interview. So I guess Video Game Chronicles had to interview with Platinum Games. Only one project in my career went according to schedule. This is Kamiya and Inabe discuss their retro revival Soul Cresta and their ongoing wait for Bayonetta 3. So I don't even know who is being quoted there, whether it was Kamiya or Inaba. I assume it would be Kamiya since his name was mentioned first. That would make the most sense. So if I do this,
100% string and 0% fluff.
then I do this,
A spin and a twirl and up. There's our puppy
do
to
this, and do that.
Our eyes close as the curtain falls. Sleep.
Watch as I wind and wind. You okay?
And I guess you end the turn there. Let's see. The headlines here is Inaba, the boss, isn't convinced the pandemic has delayed its projects, at least not yet. Let's see. Soul Cresta. It's the next big release. Is this a trailer for Soul Cresta, the shoot 'em up game? Okay, I didn't realize Platinum was the one making this reconfiguring shoot 'em up game. That does explain why I've seen more about it than most shoot 'em up games. Yep. I guess on a certain level, them working on Soul Cresta is exactly what I suggested they should do, which is make a different game outside of Nintendo to prove that they can A, make different games, and B, aren't just going to constantly be puppets of Nintendo or get acquired by Nintendo. Let's see. Moving on, Hideo Kojima wants to make games that change in real time. The experience would change depending on where you live and how you feel about it. That is the kind of ambitious craziness that will definitely get you into development hell. What's funny is he's wearing mirrored glasses, so you can see him holding his own phone here, taking a picture of himself. So it almost feels like you could then enhance and see his camera and maybe see a reflection in his camera at a different angle and just like totally see where he is. Not that I think it probably matters. He probably took this picture in the office right in front of a poster of Death Stranding. The idea of a real-world changing game is in line with Death Stranding, but it also comes from the mentality of just not really understanding how much vast emptiness can exist in the United States compared to Japan, and Tokyo in particular, where everything is incredibly compacted in Tokyo. And a game changing depending on how you feel about it either has a game asking you how do you feel about this game, or then has to invent some whole new technology to read emotions of humans, which that's a hard thing to probably program. But yeah, that's way too ambitious. And in all fairness, I think somebody needs to just say that Hideo Kojima really suffers as a game developer in actually making a good game. Something that is entertaining and fun to play as far as its gameplay mechanics. And Death Stranding really showed that by making a game that has a secondary game mechanic where you're shooting guns, and yet you can't actually kill or shoot bullets at people. Otherwise, you create a horrific explosion that blows up like a nuclear bomb. That's just a dumb concept. It's something you would maybe think about, but you probably wouldn't even speak out loud, let alone let become part of your game. It would have made a lot more sense just to have the main character be like a Buddhist monk or something, just refusing to shoot people. A pacifist of some sort. Moving on, we have a weird looking game here called Balloon Azuna, which just looks like a platforming game of no interest. $1.79, English only. We have about 25 games left to look at. Here we have a game called Kraken Academy, which looks to be mostly a visual novel, but maybe also a bit of an adventure game. Seems like you might just wander around and talk to people. Maybe it's a Kraken raising simulator. And that's an interesting thought. Raise a monster instead of a princess. $14.39 English full audio, several other languages. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. But yeah. I do wonder if there's much of a gameplay element. Seems like you probably have some bullet hell dance sequences where you avoid taking damage, but I don't know if you ever actually even fire back. There was this really old cartoon toy called My Pet Monster.
I have lost.
So it's not unheard of to have something appeal where you have a pet monster that you're taking care of raising. Well, that was one victory for this entire stream. Here we have a game called Anyek, which just looks like a minimal puzzle game. Of no interest. This probably will be a 3-hour stream by the time I actually get through all the news. English only. This is $7.19. That's too expensive. So yeah, even when I think I'm gonna end early, it doesn't seem to ever happen. Here we have a game called Wilderness Island, which just looks like an asset flip survival dungeon crawler maybe game. $8.99 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Forewarned, which looks visually polished a little bit more. Still could just be a nicely done horror game. But there is something very unique here in that this is set in a Egyptian like temple graveyard. Probably pyramid. Whereas almost all horror games are always set in the same generic looking house. This is also rated very positively. Now the thing here is this may be one of these games that streamers play with their friends and online co-op makes it a worthwhile game. But it isn't actually worthwhile otherwise. And it also seems to support VR, but not require it. $11.69 English and full audio, I'll believe that. I'm going to put that on the follow list. Here we have a game called Dinoscape, which just looks like a platforming game. free to play English. Here we have a game called Psych, which looks like mostly a horror adventure walking simulator type game. $8.99 English full audio. I think this deserves a follow because it's getting some positive reviews. It seems to me like you have to wander around finding notes and elements. Next we have a game on Steam called Bot Wars, which just looks like a bunch of neon and kind of garbage. Actually, several screenshots here really just don't even match up in art style. Early access, $10.04, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Pandora Wild Origins, which looks nice. It's a little soft cell shaded, and we'll have to see if there's actually a game when it comes out of early access. $18.99 English and French full audio. I'll put that on the follow list though. Give it a chance. Here we have a game called Lord of Click 2. Lord of the Click 2. Which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest.
Stop!
It seems like a fairly boring looking game. $3.49 English, Chinese, and Russian. Here we have the games, The Adventures of Lawanda Magir, which again, this just looks like an asset flip game. $4.99 English only. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little concerned. At some point I am going to literally not be able to tell the difference between an asset flip and a regular game, and I just start thinking regular games are asset flip games. Here we have Sam & Max. This time it's virtual, which is mostly negative. I'm wondering why that is the case. Is it because this Sam & Max game really only is like 20 minutes of experience, or is it gonna be because it's really expensive, or is it because it doesn't really work with modern VR technology and was just a terrible port? This one requires VR. It's $26.99, which is really expensive. English full audio. Let's see what the reviews have to say. In its current state, I can't recommend the game. I don't think any updates will really solve a whole lot of the issues here. The only positive I can list is that the dialogue feels mostly on point. There's a lack of whimsical cynicism in Sam & Max's dialogue, but more or less they do sound like the Sam & Max from past games. Other than that, here's a list of issues I kept having. Severe lack of interactivity. The world makes a point-and-click game look like an open sandbox. Especially when compared to Sam & Max games in the past. Sam & Max don't look at each other when they're talking, giving a really awkward and unnatural look as they stare at you. I think they did that in the previous games too. Lack of detail and empty areas all over. It's a lot of walking, maybe the occasional hidden joke to find, but mostly nothing to interact with and get dialogue out of Sam & Max. Poor rendering distances and oftentimes aggressive geometry, calling in spots where with a clear line of sight. Frustrating and uncomfortable to use VR controls. Holding objects does not feel natural and requires you to aim them at awkward angles. Inconsistent puzzle mechanics. The bomb defusing ones were the ones that made me give up due to either being unable to activate the correct mechanism or accidentally setting the wrong one off as I go for the correct one. Game feels like a very early VR game. Yep, I think that's probably the case here. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just kind of for historical reasons, but yeah, I believe this was a very early VR game. Notice also it is not being published nor developed by Telltale Games, who own Sam & Max, so they must have just straight up licensed this to another company. Because, yeah, Happy Giant, as a developer, made this game in 2015. This Usagi Yojimbo, which is also mixed, which is a shame because there might have been a reason to talk about that game. And then this publisher, Big Sugar, has a list of games, but I don't recognize any of them. Demo, mixed game, demo DLC. The only positive they had was in 2019, and that's already on my wish list. Interesting. Let's see, we better start one more game just to see if we can get a quick disconnect victory. Here we have a game on Steam called Queen of Honor, which just looks like a platforming game. 59 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Space Junk Heroes, which looks like garbage. I haven't called too many games garbage today. Most of the visuals have been pretty on point. This is $3.59, English only. Here we have a game called Super Bout Champion Tour, which is pretty ugly, pixely. Too pixely for a fighting game, in my opinion. Early access $1.99, English only. I don't know why it came back over here. Here we have a game called Mystery Trackers Train to Hell Switch Collector's Edition from Big Fish Games. This is $8.99, cheaper than the usual $12.99 they want. Here we have a game called Summer Mission, which looks like nothing. Keep getting the popping sound in my headphones, which probably means my microphone does pick up a popping sound more than I thought it did. I guess it still kind of does. But it keeps making me think that I'm hearing some banging, but I'm not really. This game, Summer Mission, doesn't look like it's polished enough. It seems like it's probably a 3D take on a visual novel with very little novel. Like they focused on making it look visually better and probably had to reduce the amount of actual dialogue because of that. $5.09, Japanese only. My question here is, does it tell you how many words are in here? There are 12 submissions with 3 endings, a playtime of 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, that's really short for what is effectively a visual novel. And it still drops back down to flat 2D animation at some point. They just were trying 3D for some reason. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Puzzle Like Connect, which I feel like I've seen far too many of these games. And I guess at a certain point, these are just pipe games, aren't they? Very similar to pipe games, at least. 69 cents. There's a whole bunch of these. And I think at a certain point, you're just flooding the Steam marketplace. Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to say no to this developer. I don't think I can trust them to not just sell me 20 easy puzzles. Next, we have a game on Steam called Family World Rome, which is $5.99, English, allegedly full audio. Looks like it's just a collection of VR experiences and nothing else. And then we have a game called Loading Story.
No!
Play as Minu as she explores the cyberpunkish little town.
Make it fashion.
Yeah, that seems weird. Positive 13 reviews, free to play. I guess English only. Check it out if you're interested. And see, with that, I am literally already done. 2 hours and 40 minutes in, so that's about it. That is about the right time. But I'm done with all the games we left over from Friday and all the news. So I'm just gonna go through my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news, and then let this game end. And then we can call it a day. I did officially unsubscribe from Humble Bundles advertisements at this point. Like, I can't imagine myself really trying to buy any more Humble Bundles. So I just don't need to be advertised to. And frankly, at this point, getting emails is kind of ridiculous. Like, I'm getting nothing but advertisements and human on human contact and communication in my current experience is dwindled down quite a bit. Like, nobody really emails me. I think people would probably just text me or call, or even like Twitter me or something like that instead. And yeah, if there was a established good system to replace emails as the place you get your reset passwords and the way in which you get contacted, I think email could go the way of the dinosaur. I think very few people are using it. And in all fairness, the idea of long form or even medium form writing of letters has long since been dead, both in the physical and the electronic version.
Ladies and gentle ghosts, follow me.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
Yeah, I've been yawning for the past hour. But at the very least, we got the stream to go today without me potentially falling asleep and trying to stream at 10 or 11 in the evening.
There's no other way. There's no retreat.
Why did I want gold again? Why did I want gold again?
So yeah, the only bit of news that's happened is God of War for PC, Gear 6, and more have been discovered in an NVIDIA GeForce Now database. The data mine potentially uncovers multiple unannounced games, or possibly, and just hear me out for a second, somebody just made a whole bunch of fake games that they would like to see on PC and put it into the database for sample data. Or the hackers planted fake news in the data breach. That could also be the case. That being said, a God of War for PC
There's no retreat.
would be cool. I'd be very happy about that. But maybe it only comes to GeForce Now, which I'm not sure, but isn't GeForce Now the one that's streaming from servers to your computer? So
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around
so I
me.
don't know if that guarantees that the God of War or Gear 6 really would be
Listen to my
available to play directly. It says that Steam version of God of War and Gear 6.
Did I want gold again?
Lots of bones, but make it
Titanfall 3, Final Fantasy IX Remake, Bioshock RTX Remaster, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Halo 5 PC. Well, we know that one's coming. GTA Trilogy Remasters. Eventually that'll happen. Crysis 4, Half-Life 2 Remaster, Injustice 3 and more. You see there's just like a video here. And I guess it's explaining how it's just manipulating the website to see things they're not supposed to be able to see. Yep. See, a GameCube emulator, Dolphin, I guess, is being also on the list. That seems weird. So yeah. And what does it really help if those are actual games that potentially are in development? Does it help anything? Are you forcing potentially them to prematurely announce their game?
You're in good hands.
What's the point there?
You were done for.
Why spoil yourself on the surprise?
I love this game. Of course
And then we have a game here called Burning Brick Breaker, which just looks like a low effort Arkanoid game. Also on Steam, which obviously I'll say no to. It's 99 cents in English only. And yeah, that is literally all I have to talk about, so I probably should just concede
soon be died.
in this game and just call it a day.
And that concludes today's sermon.
It is apparently Borderlands 3's second anniversary, which, yeah, I would not have thought that Borderlands 3 was already 2 years old. And it really is damning with faint praise, but I feel like it's kind of ridiculous to have to applaud Randy Pitchford for not shooting his mouth off. But, I mean, you kind of would have thought he would have done that. In a lot of ways, I think people's if people are if business people are who work in Texas, have offices in Texas, are upset with Texas, maybe they've decided instead of just coming out publicly and complaining about it and virtue signaling, they should instead just batten down the hatches and start packing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Borderlands, the Gearbox office in Texas shut down in favor of maintaining the two Canadian offices. Also wouldn't be surprised if Randy Pitchford just announced his retirement. He's probably rich enough to do that. It's a shame that that lawsuit with the former accountant never went anywhere, because that could have been a much more interesting experience. Yeah, I'm looking at the Amazon Prime free games, which I haven't even dealt with that in an incredibly long time. But yeah, since I have Amazon Prime, I'll do that. Now, arguably, there is a good argument to considerably buying very little next year during Prime Day, and maybe even getting rid of Amazon Prime for me. I don't watch the video. It's just the free shipping that I'm paying for, and arguably it may not be really worth it to just have the free shipping issue. Yeah, I have literally nothing else to do, and if I don't stop this stream fairly quickly, I'm gonna either fall asleep or start getting really distracted.
I envy you.
Okay, well, sorry, just going quiet. Let's get this daily bonus and then let's wrap up this stream. I always forget that I get those little tickets, but yeah, there's not a lot to do with them either, other than waste them. Yep. So yeah, we got one victory over the course of nearly 3 hours of gameplay. In all fairness, I was not paying attention, but yeah, the win ratio is still really poor with Shadowverse. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching,